Welcome to the interagency briefing, and we're talking about reducing time to hire in the federal space, and specifically talking about using ISO 9001 and ISO as a process management tool. With this, I'm going to introduce you to Julius Da Silva. Julius, say hey.
Hey, morning, folks.
Awesome. Yeah, welcome. We'd like to welcome everybody. Specifically, we have folks here from the VA, from Department of State, from EIA, and just a couple other agencies that I wasn't even paying attention to. They're popping in, which is great. National Archives is here as well, so we welcome you. If we missed your logo, we didn't do it on purpose. We just we didn't catch it as far as the late registration. So welcome to everybody that's here. A quick disclaimer: this event is not affiliated or endorsed by any agency, and is provided to the audience for informational purposes only. And all participation in this briefing is voluntary, and any engagement by you, government folks, is not an indication or endorsement of a commitment to purchase from any vendor, including QMII. So we appreciate you guys being there. We can just talk, right? The idea is just that we can make this a good roundtable type of session. If you have any questions, you can open that panel on the side and pop that open, and you can fill out the information and get that back to us. We will do our best to be able to answer your questions. And if you dialed in on the phone, you can you type in your audio pin, and we'll make sure that we can unmute you. And you can also email us at govsupport@qmii.com. So we certainly want to make sure we answer any questions that you have as well. So, and if you like the way that Julius and I look, you can make us bigger if you want. You can grab that little tool thing. It could be above or below, or you'll see that little handle there, and you can make us bigger. And if you don't like the way we look, you can make us disappear altogether. So there you go. And some folks that came in said this would be the best ever if I knew how to get workforce management and HR to process new recruitments quickly. As it is, it takes a minimum of a year. Susan, that is not unusual in the federal space, is it? And Todd says if I can get insight on upcoming issues, sure. Hopefully we can do that. I can understand how to improve the process of hiring. Brenda from the Air Force, appreciate you letting us know that. And Vern, it provided current regulations and best practices. We'll do the best we can. And Jonathan, the gap issues are adequately addressed. We will be talking about the gaps of being able to hire. And the federal employees' feedback is considered. Absolutely, Susan, we would love your feedback as well, and being able to include that in the process. So real quick, we're going to do a poll. I am here because, if we launch this poll, and it says, we need a better process for hiring. You're here because of that. I've never heard of ISO 9000 and interested, or you know about ISO 9001 and are interested in how it can help. I have other process improvement needs. That's fine too. We can certainly talk about that. And you know the QMII does great process improvement work, so you came to check out how that worked. So we appreciate that. Let us know why you're here, and we'll make sure that we address specifics to what you're looking for. And we'll leave this open for another about 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll close that. And so everybody knows that wow, look at that. It's 50% that have never heard of ISO 9001, and they're interested. And they've heard about 9001, and then they have other process improvement needs. So great, thank you for joining us, and thank you for letting us know about that. And we'll ask a couple polls here throughout the process. And what we'll cover today is we'll give you a little dose about QMII and why we're here. We just talked some of those things, but we'll talk about some of the reasons of things coming down on your head and the federal initiatives applying ISO 9000 to HR, because you'll find that ISO 9001 is not necessarily designed around an HR program, but it is a process improvement and quality improvement model. We'll answer some questions as far as what you guys have that you'd like to talk about, and we'll talk about avoiding gotchas and some procurement options for being able to solve some of these problems that you have. So with that, Julius, tell us a little bit about QMII and what it is that got you in the marketplace as well, and the types of things that you handle on a regular basis.
Hey, thanks, Dave. QMII has been around since 1986. We actually started off in Britain way before 9001 even became an ISO standard, and we've been doing process improvement and quality improvement since then. We've had a GSA contract for about 15 years now, and we've done a lot of good work in assisting the federal government improve processes across various realms, working with different agencies. We are currently located in Ashburn, and so we have easy access to the DC metro area, but we do work all across the United States as well as internationally. We also conform to ISO 9001 and ISO 14001, as these ISO standards allow you to self-declare. But we are also going in for certification, and I believe we've got a deadline of Jan 2017 to be certified. In fact, if you see my light go off in a bit here, it's because of that environmental standard where we've got these sensors to switch the lights off as I walk in the room. But we're also SBA 8A certified, and we're DBE certified by State of Virginia. We're also minority-owned business, and we're looking forward to working with those here on this call.
Awesome. And just some folks that QMI has done business with in the federal space. Here's a few of the quality improvement processes that you put in place across multiple agencies, and we actually have some folks here from the Coast Guard, which is great. So that's awesome. And any one of those you want to highlight, or you just want to move through these?
Well, the federal highways, we've been working with them for about 10 years now, and we help put processes in place over there, to help them make sure that they always get their roads and the highways always come out perfectly, so all of you can have a safe drive to work and back home without any problems. But we've also done a lot of work, including global supply security of the global supply chain for the U.S. Army, and transferring the munitions across the country and internationally. Those are some of the highlights. We've done some good work with New Jersey Transit. In fact, we've been trying to work with them now following the recent incident that they had, and I think we'll be doing some training for them in the coming month or so.
Awesome. Awesome, and that's some of the times that you see these things pop up is they're actually in the paper or on the news, right? And so that's an indicator of the need for some process improvement. So what is your biggest issue with hiring? If we take a look at those finding qualified candidates, and all this is in the process of hiring, right? So finding the qualified candidates, working through resumes, interviewing candidates, approval to offer process, that can be brutal. And an offer to start process, because once the offer happens to the time it starts. So let us know what is the most important thing for what's happening to you in your agency. And we'll keep that open for just a minute. And this is kind of like in order, right? So finding the qualified people, working through the resumes, interviewing, and approval of the process. So here we go. And we'll leave this open. It looks like it's split 50-50. Take a look. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and there you go. So we probably have some other folks that aren't even here for HR because of other process improvement needs. But there you go. So knowing that you're not alone, and most of you find yourselves in one of those two buckets. So that's great. And with that, why are we here? We're here because there's a lot of folks that are becoming eligible for retirement, which means nearly a third are eligible for retirement, which is creating a tremendous strain on the hiring process, as we know. This creates agency issues with losing expertise, having job vacancies that are not filled, and they sit there open, as Susan said, for a year sometimes. So, and then this really creates a disruption in the process of the agency effectiveness. And some of the reasons why this has happened, going to the commercial sector, popping in through different agencies and jumping from one agency to another, or even between departments within an agency, and this creates a vacancy to hire gap, right? So that's the main reason that we're here. And this has resulted in several different presidential memorandums back to May 2010 in improving the federal recruitment hiring process. OPM has a memorandum. We're going to supply you with some of these as well, just as documentation for support for this, but also initiatives that are coming down from the agencies with hiring plans and reform hiring reform action plans. These are the types of things that are happening in the agencies and have happened over the past 5 or 6 years to be able to support the federal recruitment and hiring process presidential memoranda. Then we have additional memoranda coming out from May of 2012, which is hiring reform dealing with a phased retirement and being able to improve the quality and speed of the hiring process. And we know that this is still a serious issue because of the challenges that we face in the individual agencies that we're involved in, right? And again, a third of federal employees eligible for retirement. This is what was released. And this puts agencies at a high risk for operational management, and those retirements, again, expected to rise in 2017 and 2018. So we're up against some serious things for being able to hire folks, right? So here's what we have. We have the concept of a hire, and then we have the requisition for that, right? You post the qualifications, you do the interviews, and then you identify a qualified candidate. Then you supply the offer and acceptance, and then you have a start date. The challenge being is, and we'll talk about the start to effective in that, but the challenge being is that is a huge gap from the time that you identify that you have a need and until you can actually fill that need. So then you have the second part, which is the start. You actually have people that start, and then by the time they become effective, it could be a year, 18 months, 2 years until they're really getting their feet under them to be able to help progress through the agency. It's not that they're not qualified, it's that they don't understand the inner workings of the agency and what's happening there. So there's system understanding, you have processes and procedures, individual types of systems that are put into place within these agencies, and then you talk about the training or lack thereof, because we had a lot of agencies that had to cut their training almost altogether because of some of the other process problems that happened as a result of going to some of the conferences that happened 5 years ago. And then finally you have managerial support, which is a challenge of being able to get that buy-in from above, and we'll talk about that for sure. So these are the pressures that are happening to you and your agency. You have competition for the talent, you have super huge wait time, you have a good economy in the private sector means it's bad for what's happening for recruitment and being able to place folks in the federal space, and that's something we've heard from everyone, from every agency. And then the management issues of being able to either fill those management slots or being able to adopt and adapt to these pressures. So how does this affect you personally? First of all, within an agency, it starts with a lack of knowledge and experience, and then you deal with these resource gaps, which creates additional pressure and workload on you to be able to fulfill these. Contracting, a lot of contracting folks here today, same thing happening with you. Is that this creates, if you have multiple people that leave, this creates a pressure on you for being able to, it's not like the workload is slowing down, right? So that creates delivery issues, and then we start to talk about the public exposure, which Julius, you mentioned, and that is when you see these things, New Jersey Transit being one, right? It hits CNN, or we have situations with different agencies that hit the news waves, and again, then this just gets into a downward cycle of department morale and agency morale, and ultimately stresses the HR professionals that are trying to solve the problem, and it just keeps on working through that downward spiral. So let's talk about ISO 9001. What is ISO, and is there some folks that don't know what that is? So tell us what that is, Julius, and why does it apply here?
So ISO actually is an acronym for the International Organization for Standardization, and although that if you read the acronym it goes IOS, they chose ISO, which is the Greek for equal, as you'll see with isobars, isotherms, and so on and so forth, so that when an organization conforms to or gets certified to ISO 9001, customers, and when the standard talks about customers, when ISO refers to customer, it talks about internal customers and external customers. But everyone is given the confidence that at a base level, the organization is meeting certain quality requirements, that they have a system in place that's going to work and support them. And as it is based upon these 7 quality management principles, starting with customer focus. Like I said, it's the internal, external customer. But the customer focus can only be achieved if you have good leadership. And it's not sufficient to have leadership because it's about the people, processes, and systems. So you need to have the engagement of people, and people are going to get engaged when they have a system that supports them and when they have a leadership that supports them from the top. So like I said, you see leadership, the engagement people, the process approach, and all these 3 together are going to work towards improvement and meeting the goals that the organization sets for themselves. The data that you collect will help improve the cycle the next time around when you go through the plan stage again. And as such, it builds better relationships with other agencies you work with your vendors, your contractors, and so on and so forth. But it's really a framework. It's why reinvent the wheel when something already exists that's giving you the guidelines and the key to having a good system.
And because ISO actually started out in manufacturing and applying to that type of system, right? And now it does apply really well to HR, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, interestingly, ISO 9001, or the concept of a quality management system, and most people are not aware of this, started here in the United States. So it's something that we feel that people here in America should embrace and accept as their own. Oftentimes, it's thought of as an international standard or British standard, but it really started under Admiral Rickover when the first nuclear submarine was being built. And he wasn't able to get enough people from the Hill to support the program. So he had a core group of people who went and inspected, made sure everything was working well, made sure competent people were hired timely and put in place. And as a result, the submarine surfaced under the ice cap and was a success. It then went over to Britain, who were then allies, and through the whole system and got implemented ISO, and now it's come back internationally as it's gone internationally back into the United States.
Wow, I didn't realize that. That's a great.
But to answer your question, yes, it was more focused towards. It wasn't more focused, but the concept was, more easily grasped and applied by manufacturing because it was tangible, right? It's like you produce a widget or something and it's tangible, but it's equally acceptable across, equally applicable, across service-related organizations, applicable to HR. There are a lot of HR recruiting firms out there that are certified ISO 9001. So right. When you get a client, it's good. There are churches, temples, etc., all certified ISO 9001.
Awesome. So you mentioned about the system. So walk us through this diagram here.
So it's really all about the plan, do, check, act cycle, and this cycle is known by various different names. It's known in Six Sigma by a different name. It's known as the Deming cycle, the DMEC cycle, various things. But if you look at the OPM planning guide that's come out, it aligns perfectly. The workforce planning happens at the plan stage. That's where you plan out your workforce. It helps at that stage helps you to identify the gaps that you have and how you're going to fill them. Now, at each stage, you're going to assess the risk to your system, like what's the risk of not including this in the criteria of the person you're selecting, or what's the risk of hiring a person who doesn't meet our competence requirements. And once you identify those risks, you're then going to plan to address them. As you move into the do stage, where you're actually going into the hiring process, you want to make sure you have the right people trained, or as you move them from selection to doing the job, you want to make sure that they're not only trained, but they're also competent. And Dave, you referred to that a little while ago when you said that there's a lead time before they're actually effective, and that's where the training comes in. So you determine the person is competent. Now you may have someone who's not competent, but you then have the system to support them by providing the right documentation that may be needed to support them really. And you're going to check your system. You're going to see how did it work, how did the recruitment process go, and you may not get it right the first time, but you want to go down and you want to review how did your process work, and then go and improve the system. And so in small continual improvement cycles, you're going to improve your system. Oftentimes the system is stressed because it's constantly being pushed and everyone is looking for continuous improvement. But we say to move away from that, move to this concept what ISO refers to as continual, where you improve the system, you sit back a little bit, and you say, how's it working for me? And then you make small incremental changes because it's easy to make the small incremental changes. You can see leadership as a focus at the center of the cycle because at each stage they need to be involved throughout the process. And this is not only the top leadership or top management, but leadership at each level. You're assessing the risk at each level. Oftentimes systems fail because people don't get down to the root cause. They don't get down to what was the actual issue. They often keep jumping from the check stage where they correct the issue and go back to the do stage. And it never goes back to the drawing board, as they say, to see where can we improve the system overall. And that's really where ISO 9001 is going to help.
And it becomes an issue-based thing as opposed to pointing fingers at maybe a problem with an individual, right? So
absolutely, you're going to look at, how we spoke about employee morale earlier, and this thing, really helps employee morale because you're going to look at now how did the system fail, and why did the system fail the person, not really who did what wrong. So you're going to move away from pointing that finger and the blame game, and it really helps boost employee morale. We've seen it across the board with organizations we have worked with.
And it's really hard that's one of the hardest parts is pulling people away from the finger pointing and say, you did this, you did that, to, hey, here's the issue, let's solve the issue and get to the root cause. And usually it's not a person. Every once in a while it is. And then obviously that person's got to go. But you start. So tell me about this one. This is a neat one. This is the Smoking Volcano. Tell me about this.
Well, this is what we call the Smoking Volcano, and basically you'll see it's you have the leadership at the top, or as we say, maybe the SES level, or it may be the CEO sitting in his office, his glass corner office somewhere, who has this vision of what they would like. They have the vision of what they would like the organization to be and achieve, but oftentimes due to this lack of the system, or what we put as this gaseous state in between, that vision is not communicated down to people lower down into how does it translate down to their level. How does it translate down to the workforce at the lower level? How do they connect back to that vision? There have to be objectives that are set at each level. It's easy to have this policy, but there are objectives set at each level. And this putting the system in place here really connects back. It provides the opportunity for a feedback loop. So there's a loop where information is going down to the bottom, but it also creates a feedback loop where it allows for information to go back to the top, be reviewed, and decisions based on those feedback is also sent back to the person who provided the feedback. So as a result, because they're receiving results on their feedback and opinions on their feedback, whether it was taken or not, accepted or not, they feel more committed that, okay, our thoughts are being accepted within this organization, and we are able to communicate our problems openly and talk about it, and it creates a really good working environment.
And it's interesting you say that, because that's one of the issues that was brought up from the beginning, that feedback from folks that are actually doing the work is not necessarily getting back up to the top.
Yeah, so like I said, the system really helps because oftentimes you'll find that objectives have been set by the leadership without any involvement from the bottom, and sometimes they're not achievable objectives. They're just too far out to reach. For even the 80 days that's there for the hiring process, it may be longer. Sure, we're taking an average probably here, but it may be shorter for a lesser skilled position, maybe as to a senior position that may take longer. Something that has secret clearance required that may take longer. It may run into 120, 140 days. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And that great illustration of the gap both ways, from being able to drive the vision down and also getting the feedback back to the top to make the adjustments and making it work. So we've talked a little bit about what ISO is, right? So it's a quality management system. So take us through what happens here and how we can apply this into the hiring process, which you see here is a critical business process. There isn't anything really more critical to the government functioning than having the right people in the seats on the bus and the bus being able to move.
Absolutely, and people are important. As we say, QMI uses this people process system approach, and so people are critical to the success of the organization. If you don't have the right people in place, you can have a great system, but it may not work well. However, so if any of you have probably read the Kane Mutiny, and there's a line that says the Navy is a system designed by geniuses for execution by idiots, or something to that effect. But it's not a negative statement. What it's saying is that when that ship is being bombed, when everything is going and there's chaos happening, every person on that vessel is doing what they need to do and doing it correctly without error. And that's really where the system comes into place. It's going to help once you put processes in place. And remember, the ISO 9001 is not about a documented system. It's oftentimes people associate that, oh, we're going to have 9001, it's just going to be extra documentation in excess. No, nothing kills a system like over documentation. So it's not about a document system, it's about a system of documents. So you got to remember that and keep that in mind. Sorry, Dave.
And that is a key part, and everybody here knows that there's excessive documentation, right? There's plenty of documentation for everything. But is the documentation, first, is it right? And secondly, does it really apply to the system, or is it just heaped on there? You don't even know where some of this stuff comes from,
But yeah, so so continue on. But the processes are going to help identify short and long-term strategy. And one of the key things we found is that when we work with federal clients is that the organizational knowledge is often not captured. That is usually one of the biggest failings that we have seen, is that the organizational knowledge of people who have been in that position for years and years and have all the knowledge, when they go, everything goes with them. It's not captured, noted down anywhere. And so the lead time for getting a new person and getting them on board increases tremendously.
It really does. So again, it's a method to develop better processes, and it helps get the hiring process in place, training development built in, management, and so they can get buy-in from both the bottom, get buy-in, and also to be able to get information back to the management. And it's really just the building blocks. And you mentioned it's not a one-time piece. It's a continual process improvement engine that helps keep things moving forward. So let's talk about a case study, because here's one that is right in the wheelhouse of the hiring process and being able to determine what happens here. So let's talk about this. There's a delay in the process for applications. So tell us how this worked with the Coast Guard.
So this one in particular, and we have the clearance from the Coast Guard to use it as a case study, name them, but this was for the National Maritime Center, and they were having issues. So they were not centralized, they were decentralized to the regional examination centers across the country who used to process all these applications. And the net processing time here is 57.9 days, but remember that's an average. Again, there were plus and minus. Some seafarers and mariners were waiting for as long as 6 months to get their credential. That's 6 months they can't go out to sea. That's 6 months they don't earn money. And so the admirals continuously being called to the Hill because senators were being complained to that, hey, our jobs are being on the line here. We're not able to work and earn money. And so QMII was called in to help them with a system, and we worked with them to decentralize process, and we took it down to their National Maritime Center where they're now located in West Virginia. So they were already building the building. We didn't have anything to do with that, but we recommended moving it all to this one place. And we put in processes in place. We mapped their process. We got SOPs. We helped them with the right personnel for the right job. We did a time motion study to see where were the gaps in the process, where were the roadblocks, where were the bottlenecks, and help them work through those. But once we did this over a period of 1 year, and that's a pretty good time for such a big organization. Over a period of 1 year, the net processing time came down to 21 days. And it still holds good. They're still processing these applications. This was in 2009. So 2016, they're still processing applications under 30 days, which is their goal. And in 2011, they won the Alexander Hamilton Award for the increase in performance, which was almost like 46% improvement on their work in progress.
And that's almost like your widgets, right? You mentioned the ability to be able to see it. That's a tangible difference If you're coming up near 60 days down to 21 days, that is serious process improvement. And how many folks, I know there's a lot of folks here that would love to get to the 60 days, much less get down to 21. Could you imagine if we could be able to implement things like this to be able to improve the hiring process? So here's another case study dealing with part-time personnel and loss of experience. We talked about that too, losing the experienced supervisors where the brain trust vaporizes as soon as they leave. So tell us about that.
So this was another organization we work with, and I can't name it here, but the case was that they had when they had surges in work, they would get in part-time personnel, but these part-time personnel often they were getting back from the recruitment agency that they had at the time the same personnel or same type of personnel really back, and it just wasn't working for them. And so we helped them to reassess firstly what was the matrix that they were looking at. We helped them reassess the matrix of the people that they were hiring. We helped them to reorganize their organization such that they sort of had a key now core team of experienced supervisors. But these experienced supervisors, they always have a cross-fertilization or cross-training in progress of supervisors, including the next in line, so that if ever one of the supervisors leave, they now have a backup in place ready to go, and the organization is not affected. But as part of this process, as part of this a standardized training program where you sort of train your next in line, and we capture the processes. Like we said, you don't have to have the perfect person always, but if you don't, then you need documentation to support that person, or you need to help them work through that position. So even if you have a HR specialist who's hiring someone, if you have a turnover in HR specialist, you want to make sure that if your HR specialist is not as good as the last one, the system is there to support them and help them through in selecting the right personnel for the organization.
Critically important. Critically important. That's awesome. So three factors for process improvement. Let's run through these. The importance of an ISO approach. Tell us about that. I love this. Love the top one. That the system will deliver as promised.
Absolutely. And people think of quality and they say it has to be perfect, but quality is as you define it. So you're going to set your objectives, and your system, once you set it, you can put in place a system that will help you meet whatever objective you have defined for yourself. It may not happen the first go around, but like we said, it's a continual improvement approach. Building blocks that you're creating, like I said, capture of the organizational knowledge, and nothing helps the system like removing that blame game, and moving the blame to the system itself. It really
exactly. I love that one. That's one of my favorites, because it really isn't the individual. It may be something that the individual is doing, but look at the system that's in place for the instruction of it. How often do we see this? It happens on a regular basis, and it's the most frustrating too.
It's the system for putting that individual in place as well. If you don't look at the system, you're going back to the drawing board. You're probably going to get another person who's exactly like the one who left. And
it's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? Yeah. So the importance of training cannot under impress this on folks, right? Because being able to get it's not just the training, it's not just putting the information out there, but making sure it gets absorbed, and that the process, that they actually are adhering to the process, and it increases the employee confidence and the competence, both. It's a great tool to be able to help folks understand where they are in the process. And then finally, the importance of management buy-in, because if the management doesn't buy in, there's none of this is going to be driven down.
Yep, we work with organizations where we've moved bottom up, but the process takes much longer and it's a lot more tedious than if we move top down. When you move top down, it's faster, but remember, the system is also going to help you identify what's the right training that you need to have in place.
Yep. Couldn't be more important. And this is one of those crazy process screens. Some of you have seen one of these before, but it's a map to show once you start to put these things in order. Walk us through this like at a high level, because it's kind of hard to read actually, but you can see that there's dependencies throughout the process, correct?
Yeah, so this was one of the HR process we mapped for within the Coast Guard. But this is like a high level. Think of it like a 30 or 40,000 foot level. This is the overall process of how you're going to go about it. It's the guiding guidelines, if you call it, the guidelines based on which you're going to go about running your hiring process. And then this drills down into instructions or SOPs, drills down into forms and records as needed to support, checklists, whatever's needed to support. But it's important to have this, and it's important to have an objective that you're working towards or a goal that you're working towards.
Yep. So as far as why ISO works in 9001 works in HR, again, it's a process improvement model. It's a quality management model, identifying your agency hiring bottlenecks, and they exist, right? That's not necessarily an individual. It is just part of the process that is there, and it helps develop a better process, working you through those, getting that process in place, and ultimately reducing the time to hire. Done it before. The same processes can be overlaid in this, not cookie cutter. It's not a cookie cutter thing. It's identifying what's happening and running through the agency bottlenecks, right? There isn't anything that can just come in and say, boom, there you go. You can't take what you've done in the Coast Guard and overlay it, but you can identify the principles above those, right?
Absolutely, and something key that I think differentiates us is that we go with the as is of your system. So we're not going to take everything that you currently have and like throw it out the window, but we're going to take what you have and just fill in the gaps where needed. Build and make those small changes, because small changes are always easy to implement than big change. You get faster buy-in. It's easy to monitor and assess, and we've always found this to be a success. Our clients have always found that to be really happy. They've been really happy that they've not had to throw out everything, and we've not come in with a template, like you said.
That's right. Good. All right, we're going to open up for some questions and answers. If you can open up that panel on the side, you can type those to us if you like to. If you want to raise your hand, you can raise your hand, and we'll call on you, and you can then ask the questions that you have. And I got a couple here. Let me just check to make sure no more popped in. Okay, so here's a great one. How can I tell where the hiring process is failing? That's pretty broad, but how can you tell?
So we're going to work with the organization to map their processes, to set goals, and then we're going to also help them define metrics to see where in the process they're failing. And these metrics is almost like, you can say, like a dashboard that's going to give them the information to assess where in the process, really the hiring process is failing.
Here's another one. How can this work when we do not often get buy-in from the workforce and they only view this as extra documentation? Great question.
Well, we do run a short training session when we work with our clients, where we get everyone together, or we help you create a small presentation, sort of letting them know how is this going to benefit them, because at the end of the day, everyone wants to know this one question, right? What's in it for me? And so what's in it for them really is, they're going to be more relaxed. I mean, their system is going to work better. They're going to have the right people in the right time frame. They're going to have the right training process in place, and that's really how it's going to help them.
And how long before I can begin to see tangible results? Great question.
It really depends. It's a really great question, but it depends from organization to organization. Just one of the questions, but sometimes it's usually as soon as 2 to 3 months, maybe, just depending on how big the organization, the buy-in, how long is the HR process. But sometimes within 3 months you'll start seeing effects. If not like a tangible result, at least you'll see better buy-in from people to the system, and that in itself is a great improvement there.
I think. Do you provide training on other ISO certifications, and which ones?
Well, you can just name an ISO standard and we provide training on it. We do 14,001, which is environmental standards. It's gaining a lot of recognition across the world. 28,000, which is supply chain security. We do food safety, aerospace training for AS 9100 aerospace auditors, medical devices, the whole gambit. 27,001 is big. It's increasing. 27,001, 20,000-1 are related to information security, and we've done a lot of work with that. And like I said, we do the whole gambit of ISO.
Yeah. And ISO is again, it's not stovepiped into HR, but it can certainly be overlaid on top of HR to be able to improve the processes, as well as you mentioned, cybersecurity. Huge issues, right? Huge issues that we see on a regular basis, right? So those are the types of things that that can certainly do that. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask those, and we'll do our best to get to those. I don't see any more right this minute. So I have a poll for you. I expect an HR improvement requirement. In other words, you're looking at something to be able to improve this hiring process. Is this immediate? Is it in Q2 2017? We're already halfway through Q1 2017. Crazy as that is, right? And Q4 2017, or not sure. So let us know what you have, and we'll make sure that we get you some information so that we can support you on that. All right. So with that, we'll give you a few more seconds. We're coming up on our time, so I don't want to hold you guys any more than we absolutely have to. So with that, well, 5, you can do it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's awesome. We have it broken down in thirds. And in 2000, Q2, Q3, and not sure. So we appreciate you. Thank you very much for that. And just avoiding the gotchas. This is my favorite slide. I love this one more than anything else because you get to a place where you're really not sure how this is affecting you, and especially when it comes to the procurement side. This is specific as well. You know, the program is great, but this is making sure that you're buying the right things and you're actually getting the right things from your HR support folks. So stop repeating what doesn't work. We said that before, the whole thing about insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. No cookie cutter approach does not work here. Your agency operates differently. Your buy-in from who's involved in your organization is different. And Julius, you said it. Small changes, working through these incremental changes that put you into a continuous improvement model, right? And that is so important, isn't it, that we look at those small changes.
Absolutely. As you know, if I can just add something to this list before we end, but you know that QMI has a lot of expertise in working with management and leadership to get buy-in from them as well, and that's really going to help the system.
Yep. And as far as finding folks, verifying their past performance, and being able to do these things, and from a procurement side, establishing and using BPAs. It's faster access to talent, get faster access to industry knowledge, and the federal experience and expertise is built into that model, and you don't have to keep on going out to bid in those things. And if you would like for more information on QMII, you can find our information is all over the place. We're 8A certified, as Julius mentioned earlier, and what's most important comes to the qualifications. Obviously, you want to have somebody that really knows what they're doing. The icing on the cake is being able to do sole source if that's what you would like to do. If you are mandated, like VA, for instance, going to service disabled and veteran-owned small businesses first, we can certainly accommodate you there through our partnership models that we have and people that we know. So we would love to be able to help you out with all of those things. And with that, I could use some help with, and we'll make sure that we get you the right information here too, process improvement in your agency. That's a more global than just HR, but it could include HR. Understanding more of how ISO 9000 can help. A specific hiring problem, if you have just one of those things, I had this issue that I just can't seem to solve, I'd love to know about that. And something else, please let me know. And those are the types of things that we'll get back to you. We just want to make sure that we're supporting you the best way that we can, and we'll give you a couple of things in just a minute. We're running out of time, so I'm not going to give you a whole lot of time to vote, but we have a lot of folks here that are saying that they need process improvement and understanding more about how ISO will help their agency. So there you go. We have the same folks that are voting over and over again, and they're voting in blocks. So there you go. And real quick, for the follow-up, you can expect links to the initiatives in the memoranda that we talked about earlier on in the presentation. We'll give you a copy of the presentation on the PowerPoint and a video link on YouTube, because this whole thing is being assembled as we speak, as a matter of fact. The Q&A, if you have any additional questions, we'll include those as well. We have a couple more that are coming in that are a little bit more specific. We will make sure we get to those. For the purchasing options for QMII in response to your specific needs that you responded to, and sample scopes of work, because I think that can help as well. We had somebody ask that I didn't ask earlier. So there you go. And with that, we're going to let you go. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us for this. We appreciate what you do and wish you the greatest of Thanksgivings as we're nearing that time of year again with the holidays. It's just the older I get, the faster this moves. I don't know about you, Julius, but it is crazy how fast things move now. So any parting comments as far as anything, the one thing that you would like folks to take away besides this?
Well, I think it's important to use the plan, do, check, act cycle to always go back to the drawing board. And, like I said, the system is going to help move blame away from the individual, blame the system, get down to the root cause each time. And you're going to see wonders.
And it is exactly that. It is wonderful. Well, great. Again, happy Thanksgiving to everyone and happy holidays. We will be following up shortly. Thanks for joining us, and we will just wish you all the best this holiday season.